So Ulduar has already been out for a week. Most guilds have absolutely smashed it and are getting ready to quit the game again. And today, we're going to be reviewing the raid progress so far. So was the raid overhyped? Was I right in saying that it's probably going to be easier than most people think? Or am I going to look like an absolute tit? Well, we'll soon find out. And we're also going to be looking at some interesting details from the world first race. So let's take a little look at the Warcraft log progression distribution chart. Now, don't feel stupid for not understanding what on earth we're looking at here, because neither did I when I first looked at it, to be honest. The fellas over at Warcraft logs probably had a few cans of special brew before they made this thing. But basically, hard mode bosses award 5 points on this chart, so that's why it's very scattered. Because many different guilds have defeated a different amount of hard modes within the raid. And that's also why it's very weirdly out of 54. So if we look at the results, 53% of the guilds have cleared every single boss including Yogg-Saron, but interestingly only 0.5% guilds have done every single hard mode. In fact, most guilds haven't even done that many hard modes yet. So it looks like the raid, minus the hard modes, obviously is not guild breaking. It won't be long before that 53% turns into a 90%. But these hard modes are definitely giving many guilds some grief. So if so many people have actually taken on one of the hardest bosses in the game, that's telling me that many hard modes just haven't been done yet, probably mainly to time limits that a guild has to deal with. And obviously gear. Most guilds raid a couple of nights a week, and when there's a new raid out, it's probably going to take 2 raid nights, maybe 3, to get every boss down, especially if you're progressing with people who are totally new to the raid. And I think a lot of guilds just aren't bothering with hard modes yet because they want to gear up their raid before they attempt them to make them smoother. If you like the video so far, guys, please do like and subscribe to the video. You may also want to check out my second channel very soon. On there, I'm going to have a video about the new Hogwarts Legacy game, which is essentially the new Harry Potter RPG. My second channel is called MetaGoblin, and you will always find it in the description of all my videos. You also have to bear in mind that a big part of the classic community are actually casual players, whereas retail has much more of a bigger, hardcore competitive scene. So progression charts like this are always going to make the raid look harder than it really is. I mean, because let's be honest, classic players even struggle to turn their camera around fast enough for the lunatic gaze mechanic on Yogg-Saron. But I definitely think that the difficulty in Ulduar is not exceptionally difficult, it's just more on par with retail difficulty. And it's no longer a snooze fest like most previous raids in our classic World of Warcraft journey. This is especially the case for Yogg-Saron hard mode. I mean, that is practically a mythic raid fight due to all the tuning changes. Making Ulduar a very difficult raid that many classic WoW players won't be able to complete this phase is definitely a good thing for the game, because it means that Ulduar will stay relevant in the next Trial of the Grand Crusader and Onyxia phase. Ulduar is going to be a raid with a lot of longevity and relevance in the classic WoW raiding scene. We're going to be raiding this for a good 8 months, most likely. But I still don't think Ulduar is insanely difficult. You just need good gear and patience in order to finally get these hard modes defeated, unless you're in a Giga Chad guild. Blizzard have designed the raid in a way to make the content last longer. Mechanically, most of the hard modes, they are fairly simple, apart from the last boss. The thing that gets in the way of progression is mostly player power. Classic players will need more gear to progress because on average they are less skilled than retail players. But by the way, don't misinterpret this as me hating on classic players. Classic is just more of a casual game, and that's totally fine. At the end of the day, I couldn't care less how good you are at a video game. Yogg-Saron is very simply the exception to this because it is mechanically a very difficult fight, and possibly also Mimiron. You know, they're like fairly similar to the difficulty of Mythic mode on retail. But still, it's definitely no Kil'jaeden Mythic. Barely any guilds actually managed to get Kil'jaeden down back in the day when Legion was out because it was mechanically difficult. In fact, they had to nerf it several times in order to actually make it accessible for most guilds. You see, that's what I would consider a difficult raid. A raid that actually prevents progress because it is that mechanically challenging for most players. Not a scenario where you just have to wait a little bit longer to get better gear and then you're going to smash all the bosses. I don't think Ulduar is going to receive any nerf to raid boss mechanics. If you want to see some actual challenging raid boss fights, like bosses that took world first guilds several months to finally complete, you definitely want to check out my most recent video of the top 10 hardest MMO raid bosses of all time. Now I'll leave that linked in the description. Trust me, it's going to blow your mind. It will make Ulduar look like Animal Crossing. There's also actually a world boss on that list that required over 800 people to actually down it. The world first race was also a very exciting and surprising watch because it's probably the first time we've actually seen the top guilds actually wipe. We streamed it over here on YouTube and the whole raid was cleared in just over an hour by Beefbar. In fact, I think it was 1 hour and 20 minutes. What's interesting about these world first races now is there's some actual guild competition rather than just watching the same guild absolute decimate the field. So compare this world first race, done and dusted in 1 hour 20 minutes, all hard modes completed, and then compare that to a retail world first race that normally takes several weeks before the last boss goes down. And I think that just speaks volumes about the difficulty of classic WoW compared to retail World of Warcraft. Let's imagine a magical scenario where instead of classic WoW players progressing on Ulduar, let's take all the retail players as they are now and make them take on Ulduar. Retail players would absolutely decimate Ulduar as it is now, and that progression chart we looked at previously would be a very different story. Another thing I found weird about the world first fight is you only had to do all of the hard modes and Algalon to achieve world first, so you could actually skip Ignis and Razor Scale to get world first and, you know, world second, etc. Which I thought was like a bit naff. I mean, bro, you've not even finished the raid, but whatever, I do not make the rules. The top guilds used multiple warlocks, sometimes 7 warlocks, and it makes a lot of sense because their sustained damage, once in full phase 1 basic gear, is the absolute bee's knees, especially for those longer fights in Ulduar, not to mention their execute phase and insane AoE to clear trash. Compare a warlock to a fire mage, for instance. They still both do fairly decent AoE DPS, but a warlock just has a life tap and can carry on running, whereas a mage has to stop and drink. Death Knights were also very well represented, most guilds taking at least 3, despite the nerfs to their Gargoyle Snapshot, their damage is good, even on those longer fights, because again, the same reason the Warlock's good, they have great sustained DPS, it's just unstoppable. We'll be making a longer video focused on class DPS straight after this video actually, which is very likely, if I stay on schedule, to upload on Saturday evening, so stay tuned for that. But anyway, until my next video, ciao.